This one finishes level, but do not let the result fool you. Hikaru spends the whole game turning the screws, and Wei Yi keeps slipping out of the trap by a single move. Hikaru answers with the Sicilian immediately. No warm-up, straight into imbalance. Hikaru adds another useful move and keeps the position uncomfortable. Hikaru is building a shell that can defend and counterpunch at the same time. Wei Yi chooses the aggressive bishop setup. He is not asking for a quiet edge here. Hikaru says fine. Earn that bishop placement on the queen side first. White improves with purpose and keeps the position pointed toward play, not peace. White adds another useful move without letting the opening go flat. Now the structure hints at a dragon, but Hikaru is mixing speed with flexibility. White reinforces the center and keeps long attacking ideas in reserve. That pawn thrust is a very Hikaru question. Where exactly is that bishop supposed to live if black keeps taking space? The dark square bishop joins the argument, and suddenly those queenside pawns are not just space. They are cover for development. Black finishes the shell and waits for the first overreach. Wei Yi does not want to get squeezed on the wing, so he challenges the pawn chain before it rolls any farther. The bishop comes back, but on changed terms. Black has already traded wing space for activity. Now the knight jumps in, and the opening stops feeling theoretical. White is making contact with the whole black setup. Hikaru does not panic. He steps the queen over and keeps every piece coordinated. Only after sorting those wing details does black tuck the king away. Wei Yi cashes in the bishop pair idea for structure. He wants black's pieces defending each other awkwardly. White recenters the bishop and makes the dark squares matter. Hikaru answers with a little provocation. The bishop steps out and asks whether white can really keep both sides of the board under control. Now Wei Yi castles. He spent the opening aiming pieces first and sheltering the king second. Black strikes the center and says the free setup phase is over. From here on, every move has to justify itself. White keeps pressing the cleaner version of the position and refuses to drift. Hikaru keeps choosing activity over comfort, which is why the game never really settles. There is the queen swing. White is making sure the king side never feels fully safe. Hikaru is happy to invite exchanges if they reduce the attacking punch. White keeps pressing the cleaner version of the position and refuses to drift. That recapture matters. The king looks airy for a moment, but black has removed one major attacker. White keeps the momentum alive and makes black keep proving the setup. Black's bishop takes a patient detour, but the point is simple: regroup and overprotect. Wei Yi reroutes the knight because this position is about coordination, not beauty. White grabs a bigger share of the middle and tries to freeze black before the rooks get loose. Hikaru refuses to sit and wait. He breaks in the middle immediately. Black welcomes the structural change because clearer lines mean clearer counterplay. White shoves forward and turns the center into a timing contest. It looks awkward, but retreating is sometimes the price of keeping the whole position together. That same knight returns on better terms. Hikaru is defending with patience, not ego. White keeps the momentum alive and makes black keep proving the setup. Hikaru steps the queen back and keeps the position compact. The rook shift tells you the next argument will happen down the middle. Black calmly develops and asks white to prove there is something concrete. The knight circles back in, looking for dark square pressure and a clean jump forward. Hikaru meets piece pressure with piece pressure. He would rather fight for the key terrain than babysit pawns. This is the kind of outpost that makes defenders sweat. White has finally planted a piece deep in the position. Hikaru does not argue with the knight. He removes it and forces the game into a cleaner shape. White keeps the momentum alive and makes black keep proving the setup. Now black's queen tidies up the middle, and the game starts leaning toward heavy piece technique. Wei Yi keeps asking direct questions before the pressure disappears. Hikaru keeps choosing activity over comfort, which is why the game never really settles. White cashes a pawn and makes sure the transition favors activity, not passivity. Black gives back the bishop immediately and keeps white from hanging on to the extra pawn. Hikaru immediately starts steering toward a rook ending where activity can matter more than structure. White keeps the momentum alive and makes black keep proving the setup. Now the queen trade is real, and both players know the rook ending will be about tempo more than material. White's rook lands centrally, ready to defend or press depending on what black chooses. Hikaru is first to blink on the wing, and that is the signal that black is playing for more than a safe half point. Wei Yi returns the favor at once. If rooks are going active, both sides are coming with receipts. Black's rook snaps into the race and the endgame becomes a contest of activity. White keeps pressing the cleaner version of the position and refuses to drift. There it is. Hikaru doubles on the second rank and now every king move feels dangerous. Wei Yi does not crawl backward. He puts a rook in black's face and asks who is really attacking whom. Hikaru kicks the rook and keeps forcing decisions. Black switches lanes without giving up initiative. That flexibility is the whole point of rook activity. Wei Yi steps aside, but now the king is living on calculation alone. And Hikaru cashes immediately. This is the squeeze turning tactical. White keeps pressing the cleaner version of the position and refuses to drift. The invasion is real now. Black is not just checking. Black is coordinating. White keeps the momentum alive and makes black keep proving the setup. Both rooks are humming, and the back rank is doing all the work for Hikaru. That defensive rook swing is precise. White needs one rook active and one rook useful. Hikaru improves the king without letting the initiative cool off. Wei Yi tries to untangle, but the rooks are still tied to emergency duty. Black keeps the king close enough to support the pawns and far enough from tactical noise. White finally coordinates the rooks, which is why the next attacking idea matters so much. That rook dive is the whole Hikaru experience. Maximum activity, maximum practical pressure, and one more problem for the defender. Wei Yi keeps walking the king through the storm because there is no safe bunker, only accurate steps. Hikaru brings the king up too. When the rooks are active, the king becomes another attacking piece. White finally finds some lateral room, and that matters because checks alone are not enough. Black refuses to release that flank pressure. The attack has to keep a second threat alive. Wei Yi is one move away from stabilizing if he can start trading on his terms. Hikaru keeps the rook active, but now the position loosens just enough for counterplay. Pause here, because this is the whole endgame concept. Passive defense gets tied to pawns. Active defense keeps the rook mobile, keeps the checks alive, and turns every trade into a choice instead of a concession. White lunges at the exchange because simplifying on the right moment is part of good defense. Black accepts, and now the ending turns from roar to nerve. That trade helps Wei Yi because one active rook is easier to coordinate than two overloaded ones. Hikaru keeps the pawn rolling anyway. He wants the king tied down until the very end. White stays active because passive defense would let the pressure snowball. Black builds the pawn net and makes the rook ending more concrete with every move. White stays behind the pawns, exactly where the rook can annoy both king and structure. Hikaru switches sides again. He is hunting the king and the pawns at the same time. Wei Yi keeps the rook active because standing still would let the pawns do the talking. Hikaru keeps the rook alive on both sides of the board, which is what makes the ending feel dangerous. White keeps checking the side of the structure, never letting black settle. Black keeps probing from behind. No rush, just pressure. White stays active because passive defense would let the pressure snowball. Same idea, new angle. Hikaru is trying to win by refusing to let the defense rest. White makes the defense practical by keeping the rook involved in every question. White stays active because passive defense would let the pressure snowball. Now the pawn finally gets rolling, and every exchange has to be calculated from scratch. Wei Yi takes the decision head on. If the pawn is dangerous, remove it before it breeds chaos. Hikaru instantly replaces one threat with another. That is why these endings are so cruel. White stays active because passive defense would let the pressure snowball. Hikaru keeps the rook alive on both sides of the board, which is what makes the ending feel dangerous. Beautiful defensive technique. The rook hits the pawn with tempo and drags the king into calculation. White stays active because passive defense would let the pressure snowball. Hikaru keeps the rook alive on both sides of the board, which is what makes the ending feel dangerous. That is why the draw holds, not by sitting still, but by active clarity. Wei Yi protects the king, keeps the rook active, liquidates at exactly the right moment, and denies Hikaru the full conversion he was hunting.